Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/malicious compliance. In today's episode, try not to think. Alright, I won't. You want me to follow the rules, okay, I'll follow them. If you don't like it, you can leave. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Try not to think. Alright, I won't. I signed up for a startup job that said they needed my skills earlier this year. During the interview, they advertised themselves as experienced businessmen trying something new, needing someone with my skills because they had no one with that kind of experience, open to changing as the market did. I said I wanted to learn more about some of the tangentially related aspects of my field to grow, and they said it would be a good fit. So I took the job for 2 quarters of the year with a set exit point. A very important note, my pay was coming from a third party with interest in both the startup and development of people from my city. So while I was their employee, I was pretty explicitly there for the learning experience instead of the pay. This company was proposing a tech solution for restaurants. The pandemic hit, and I started about 2 weeks later, right as the racial tensions in the US reached their peak. I meet with my new boss, excited to get started, and they let me know they made a last-minute hire of a friend, part-time, who's going to be my supervisor. I was paid for full-time hours for a pretty demanding, constantly shifting environment, but my direct supervisor was only going to be working 15 hours a week. The person who hired me/founder says that he'll be largely unavailable to me because of how busy he'll be, and I should refer to new supervisor instead. So there goes that learning environment I signed up for. Strike 1. I meet with my new supervisor, and before literally anything else comes out of his mouth, I know things are pretty hard for you people right now, so just know that I understand if your work is lower quality than it usually would be. Ah yes, judging me by the color of my skin before you know literally anything else about me. Strike number 2. Next meeting with supervisor and boss, and they want to donate to BLM. OP, can you write a report on what charities we should donate to? We think you'd know best. This has literally nothing to do with my job description, and isn't even tangentially related to our business. They're clearly only asking me because I was the only person of color at the company at that point. I asked if we had any black business owner partners, and they say no. I told them, this is going to come off as tone deaf and we shouldn't do it. It has nothing to do with our product, our partners are literally all white men, and we're offering less than $500 in donations. It'd be better to try and invite some black business owners and focus on community development. They tell me to do it anyways, and that it will be the only work for me during my first 2 weeks. Then, once I've written the report, a white accountant on the team says this will come off as tone deaf, and I don't think we should do it. So we don't. Strike 3. You're out. But I'm a professional, so I covered my bases before giving up. I speak with the program organizing third party, and they tell me they can't switch my company. They give me some tips for fitting in better, and I spend a few weeks doing literally anything they ask, as well as I can. I get several weeks worth of work done in very little time, even doing side projects to try and show how capable I am at my job. I speak directly with my supervisor, comparing my current workload with previous jobs and stating explicitly that I feel I could be better utilized if they'd give me a chance. Showing my work to my sponsor, they start giving me side projects because they're impressed. But every time I turn in a project to the tech restaurant place, one of the co-founders, who like me, worked his way up in the world, tells me how fantastic it is. That it meets every standard he has, and he's excited to show it to his partner. Once the boss sees it, he nitpicks it apart, saying it's not what he wanted. There were times he edited me in circles, having me change A to B, then B to C, then C to A, and asking why I didn't just do A in the first place. I try to explain why doing what he asks is against best practice, or hurts our customers in 1,000 different ways. Based on our board members' feedback when I was at the meetings, everyone but him is on the same page. But if it's not his idea, he hates it. And if it's from young, black me, then he especially hates it. Finally, this tech restaurant business sits me down after the first quarter for a performance review. Unlike normal businesses, they didn't ask for any feedback for them, they just wanted to tell me that I was too opinionated, trying too hard, that I should try not to think so much about the work. So, I do. I stop doing extra projects for them, and start taking up more well-paid side gigs. Like, really well paid. $50 an hour with performance bonuses is normal for my position, and this startup is throwing that away. Eventually they have me write a single blog post every week instead of doing my job. I'm excluded from pretty much any meeting that wasn't contractually required. Their sales plummet as I stop pushing back against bad business practices, to the point that I started graphing it in an Excel spreadsheet. They went from $10,000 a month to $200 a week, with several weeks with no sales. I'm getting forwarded customer complaints by the good founder, and my response is, oh man, yeah, that seems like a problem. I could fix it, but you'll need to get permission from direct supervisor. Direct supervisor / friend of the bad boss turns out to have way less time available than even the 15 hours, and is almost never responding. When I tell him the good founder wants me to work on a project, he says that he doesn't think I can handle it and shouldn't worry about it. So I don't. Repeat. Second quarter over, and I remind the bad founder that I was leaving. I put together a folder of all of the things they'd need from me, as well as detailed instructions on how to move over permissions from my account. Instead of doing that, they just leave everything as is. Now 2020 is over. I've made good money this last quarter, working for the sponsor company and other contracts. My new jobs really appreciate all that I'm doing for them, and some of them even sent me Christmas presents. I still get phone notifications about the startup's weekly sales because they never turn them off, and it's gone down to 2 orders or less a week. What's especially funny to me is that the account sending me the notification is licensed at a pretty penny, so they're incompetent enough that they're paying extra money to update me every week. A couple of grand a year. Friend of a friend told me their potential investors pulled out after I left, since the bad boss thought he could do it all on his own. Several board members have jumped ship. There were only the 2 co-founders left once I headed out at the end of the second quarter. Even my old supervisor left, and their website says that's still the case. They've stopped offering live support or refunds, and started getting some pretty poor reviews from clients. I'll be surprised if they last. If they do, I'm sure they'll get a nice Twitter welcome in a few years once they try to hire another POC person, and they treat them with the racism they doled out to me. You want me to follow the rules? Okay, I'll follow M. Worked in a prison years ago as a correctional officer. Our shift supervisors were sergeants. For the 12 p.m. shift was one of the busiest as we had the most activities going on during that time. Evening church service, gymnasium time, library, visitation, attorney visits, medication and sick calls, etc. etc. Mealtime was always one of those times where thing had to be done quickly, and without delay as it would gum up the works for everything else. Sergeants wanted it done like clockwork and without a hitch. They were also big on inmates are given a rule book and are expected to abide by it. You as an officer should know this book inside and out, forwards and backwards, and should make sure that inmates are following it. We actually got yelled at and written up when inmates didn't follow the rules, go figure, and the only saving grace was if we gave written warning to the inmates. Can't blame the officer for the inmate not following the rules if the officer wrote it down that he told the inmate to not do something, and they didn't basically. One of the biggest issues was inmates not coming out of their cells to get their food trays on time. Half the block at a time would come out, get a tray and go back in their cells, lock up, and the other half would come out and get their trays and eat at the tables. This switched back and forth based on shift and days. Now as the officers we were expected to give 3 verbal call for chow over the PA system for the block. First was something like 20 minutes prior to start, second like 10 minutes prior, and last was like 5 minutes prior. So the officer had time to go around and secure all the cell doors closed. They could be opened automatically, but had to be manually closed to lock. After getting my rear end chewed for chow starting late by the supervisors because I had to stop at every other inmate's cell and wait for them to finish brushing their hair, put on their shoes, step out of the cell, and make sure the door was locked, for the umpteenth time I said screw it. You want to ride my *guess about this? Fine, we gonna do it by the book. So I pulled out the almighty inmate rule book and found the section about feeding times, schedules and procedures. It stated, and I'm vague on the exact working as it's been ages ago, but I remember the gist of it. If an inmate refuses to exit their cell after being given the 3rd call for chow notice by the officer of the block, the officer is to secure the cell door and not provide the inmate with a tray. Basically we as officers weren't to go get a tray and take it to the inmate's cell as we weren't their butlers. Now granted, we knew which cell doors were problematic and we could work around that, as sometimes an inmate would still be in their cell standing by the door waiting on us, and we could call the control room and say open cell such and such again, then yank on it when we heard the motor operating in order to make sure the inmate was getting out to eat. No problem, not their fault, not ours, put in the notice to maintenance to fix it and move on. However, with the "oh, I'm here at the Holiday Inn and I'm going to make your life miserable because I can crowd." If they didn't get out of their cells on time because they wanted to drag their feet, I would go by, slide the door closed, they automatically locked, and keep going to check the next cell. Yes, you guessed it, immediate, you are denying me my food and I want a supervisor and I'm going to gut you like a fish, you dirty. You'd hear it all. I only explained the procedure about 3 or 4 times and word spread within the prison. Officers never worked the same block for more than a week or 2 before rotating. I had inmates refuse to lock up demanding to see a supervisor until inmate so got his tray delivered to his cell because he wanted to lay on his bunk and read a book. Naturally, this delayed feeding the entire block as we still had half the block waiting. I'd get a call from a supervisor who was sitting in the control room watching and wanting to know why I wasn't getting chow done on time. I told them to come on over and I'd explain it as the inmates weren't listening to my instructions anyways. Supervisor comes over and starts to ream me in front of the inmates. I pull out a copy of the rule book, already open to the section in feeding times, policies and procedures, and read verbatim that once 3 calls for chow were giving if an inmate. Then I'd show the supervisor the time sheets we kept, where we made entries of all the events that happened, inmate so left block to go to library at 1,620 hours, inmate returned from medical at 1,625 hours, etc. First call for chow given at 1,700 hours, second call at 1710 and third call at 1,715 hours. Supervisor looked at me, looked at the rule book, looked back at me, started to tell me to get a tray and take it to them. I said sure, just as soon as we go talk to my union representative and the warden about rewriting the rule book to accommodate the inmates' desires on any given day and time. This all happened a grand total of maybe 2 times before the supervisors caught on that they no longer had to say follow the rule book and make sure to abide by it or you will. They knew I was doing things by the book and they never said another word to me about it. They also never told me to go get the inmate a tray and take it to them ever again. If you don't like it, you can leave. I know this isn't an epic professional malicious compliance story, but it was fun and rewarding when it happened. When I was in school, about 14 years old, we got a new arts teacher. Our previous one was amazing. She used to be a famous painter in our state that wanted to teach in her free time and paint just for pleasure. She taught us the basic techniques while encouraging us to create and experiment. She also implemented an arts fair in our school, kind of like a science fair. We had one big theme and each grade had a sub-theme that would fit. The students used to split in groups and come up with an idea that would use some of the material in our curriculum, but we still had a lot of freedom to create. We would have to clear it with her, and she helped us with ideas, materials, guidance. The fair had been going for years, and it was one that parents actually liked to attend, going back to it even after their kids already left the school. It's important to note that the school was really not a big one. My grade was the last one that was taught there, and we only had 20 to 30 students per grade. So we had all classes together, and we all knew each other well. Awesome teacher's health wasn't that good anymore and she retired. Comes new teacher that from the get-go seemed to be intimidated and full of hatred for our previous teacher. She would talk badly about our previous teacher's work, say that what we learned was useless, that everything we were doing was bad and wrong since we never were taught any better, etc., etc. We already didn't like her, but it was our last year there, and we weren't confrontational. Then, time for arts fair comes up. We are excited. Our whole theme is art from our country and each grade got specific states. The one my grade got has a really rich culture with characteristic clothes, dances, etc. We were excited and started organizing ourselves. Then, new teacher tells us that none of that is going to be presented. She wants us to split in groups of 2s and make sort of a painting, using papier-mâché and trapping objects of that state in it. We were like, but we want to present the dance. We already talked with someone who has the clothes for us to borrow to present in a living statue. We want to do more, and she went on this rant about how our old teacher used to let us do anything, but we were not following the curriculum, and it was ridiculous, that she knew what was best for us, and we were all brats, that the old teacher made the art fair become a laughing matter, and she would not have it. We tried presenting our reasons. We said that having over 10 of the exact same thing was not going to represent the culture of the state, it would be boring to look at, and that we didn't mind doing it if we could also do more. She got angrier and angrier with us trying to talk to her, so she said, "This is my class, and if you don't like it, you can leave." So, of course, we left. All of us just got up and left. We went straight to our principal's office, that was tiny. She agreed to see us, and it was a mess, all of us teenagers feeling that we were not being treated fairly, complaining about our teacher all at once. Our teacher finally showed up, crying. Our principal asked us to wait outside of her office. Finally, 3 of us were invited back inside, where our version was asked. The teacher was still there, and we explained what happened and what we wanted, with her crying in the corner and sobbing all the time. I am glad to say that none of us let that make us back away, and the principal didn't allow it either. We reached a compromise: we would make sure to have at least 5 of those hideous paintings she wanted, and we would still be allowed to do everything else we wanted. The fair itself was horrible. Our class was the only one allowed to do anything different, so every room just had things hanging in the wall, all looking similar to each other. Ours had typical food from that state for people to snack on, dance presentation every 30 minutes, people doing living statues with the full clothing we got from a cultural center, a TV showing short movies from artists of that state, and a bunch of students wearing some sort of attire from there with a ton of information about the state to tell visitors. Plus, 5 of those paintings in a corner that no one paid attention to. It didn't take 2 more years for the art fair to stop happening, since it didn't get attendance from the public anymore, and the parents complained about the waste of time, plus the waste of money the school had hosting it. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.